Thank you.
My question is relating to party politics, and I'd like if each of the candidates could speak to their own party as a consequence of this. And I'll start with you, Mr. McLaughlin. You mentioned Pedro Espada, and I'll be talking about him in a moment with the senator, but Pedro Espada was recruited by Senate Republicans to join their party during the coup, and they even promised him a leadership position. Before that, the Senate Majority Leader Joe Bruno became the poster child of conflict of interest. Right now, it's an interesting, to say the least here, political season for what's on the ticket. When you look at the state of New York and the Republican Party, do you share the same level of condemnation you have for Democrats for Republicans as well?
Well, I don't know if I condemn, either party. No, I don't think either of our parties is worse than the other when it comes to that. Unfortunately, I think in both we have bad apples. That doesn't reflect on Senator Cousins. I don't think when it happened in Yonkers City government it reflected on me. I think we all think the best of our colleagues and really try to hope for the best in them and assume.
Fair enough. Maybe I can rephrase it to the leadership right now of the Senate Democrats. You've been very critical of. Do you think that same criticism is warranted on the Republican side of the aisle as well?
Well, I think it's warranted if there's reason to believe, and after a certain number of things are taking place, you have some inclination that there's things going on, but again, by the flip side, people are innocent until proven guilty. So, even though we've seen a lot of things about Pedro Espada and in the past about Joe Bruno, and he's been convicted and it's been overturned, there's still a lot of things to look at there, and I do believe that most elected officials really are out for the common good, and we're trying to do better for our communities. We have different ways of going about and doing it, but we therefore give a lot of credence to each other, maybe a little more latitude than others would. In terms of the leadership, again, no, I don't blame the Democrats for Pedro Espada and anything he did in the same way that I wouldn't have blamed the Republicans for any ills that Joe Bruno may have caused. That's on the individuals. The issue that I'm taking with that corruption that's going on in Albany is that there needs to be affirmative steps taken to root it out, to put in stopgaps, whether it's additional ethics disclosures. We voted on and passed one of the most stringent and toughest ethic laws in the state of New York in Yonkers. There needs to be more disclosure. There needs to be disclosure about outside income. There needs to be disclosure about these not-for-profits that they're steering monies to, and if there's any friends and family that are working in those establishments. Those are the ways that I think you root out that corruption. We try not to be too suspicious of our colleagues and hope for the best and give them that benefit of the doubt, but by the same token we have to be a little more, actually a lot more vigilant in putting measures in place that would catch that corruption if it is taking place.
Ms. Stewart-Cousins, speak to that, because while he says that your opponent says he's not painting with a broad brush here, I've seen, not just in this race but in others, Democratic leadership is certainly right at the top of almost every campaign ad that I've seen to that end. What about your leadership? What about the fact that Pedro Espada was welcomed back here? He was given a position of authority. You can speak to others as well here, and it was on the Democrats' watch where a lot of these problems happened. Is there a problem with the Senate Democratic leadership in Albany?
I speak as someone who sat on a panel that ultimately expelled Hiram Montserrat because of the abhorrent behavior. So I have very little tolerance for misbehavior, regardless of which party. It is a stain on all of us, and it's frankly an embarrassment. Although, certainly, as my opponent says, you can't paint everyone in that way. The leadership now, John Sampson is a person of integrity, and he, in his leadership style, is very, very different from former leaders. We actually, as part of the reforms that we've been able to pass, including even strong ethics reform, the strongest in 70 years on the state, we have been able to empower all of the legislators so that in our Senate conference, everybody matters. Everyone's voice is heard. So although there is a leader, it's not the leadership that is good or bad, because frankly, we have been able to, with the reform that we've pushed forward, to be leaders in our own right, which I believe is what people want to happen. I think, I trust the people. The people voted out Pedro Espada. He is not going to be a senator. people understand the difference.
Do you wish that your party never took them back after the failed coup?
Well, I think what you said initially was the reality. The voters voted for a Democratic majority. The coup was Republican engineered, and they took two weak links and created a scenario that frankly held the state hostage for an embarrassing long time. To end the stalemate, and I have put forth different proposals that would allow us to have collective leadership, shared. I just want to get it done. However, there were agreements that the majority, as the voters had elected the majority, would continue, and Pedro did return. We were able to move forward because, as you began with party politics, in the Senate, 32 votes matter. And nothing happens unless there are 32 votes. That's why the coup happened, because those two became the 32 for the Republicans, and when the two came back, we became the 32 for the Democrats. In order to get work done, if there is going to be these very, very partisan positions, which unfortunately, certainly during this very difficult year, we have seen Republicans refusing to vote and Democrats having to go forward. We needed 32 votes, and we had them for the tough decisions.
Thank you, Senator.
I'd like to go back to Yonkers. You had touched before on the education funding formula, and I'd like to expand on that because clearly that is the most significant financial problem facing the city. The formula is dramatically different for Yonkers than from Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo, and therefore provides less money to the city. And Ms. Stewart-Cousins, why has this formula never been corrected to put Yonkers on an equal footing? You had mentioned before that you were working on something, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. This is an interesting exercise that I share with people because this is the dysfunctionality that I found when I came. Basically, what had happened in the past, is that the Senate, which was run by the Republicans, since there wasn't really a formula, the Senate Republicans, who mostly were from upstate and Long Island, were able to push money in those directions. The Assembly, which is dominated by Democrats, many downstate Democrats, ostensibly took care of New York City, and we had the CSE, so that how that worked is questionable. However, on the Senate side, during the time that people were bringing money upstate and to the island, we did have desegregation money that was coming into Yonkers. And I don't know that anyone noticed the huge disparity that was growing between what upstate, Syracuse, Rochester, etc. was getting and what we were getting, because we had hundreds of millions of dollars that were coming into to the state from the federal government. When that wound down, what we realized, or what they realized, again, it was before I got there, was, oh my goodness, there is a disparity. And there was an agreement worked out where the state would put in hundreds of millions of dollars up front because the city could not afford that. And the city would have a maintenance of effort, and at some point the state's amount would dwindle and the city's amount would step up. The city's amount didn't really step up, and there was a point where there was about $30 million of city money that wasn't there. The state has also continued to grow, but obviously you can't recapture 20 years of not having in 1 or 2 years.
But just to clarify, you are working on a new